We start with the keynote presented by the iconic literary agent, Lynn Nesbit. We're delighted to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm really delighted to be here because I found the festival inspiring since India seems to embrace books and writers in a way that's quite a bit challenging now in the United States. But first let me say, I had no idea what Seagull was, and I can only tell you that I think it's wonderful that you have such a program, because I got my start in publishing by going to the Radcliffe Publishing Program, which went on for 6 weeks in the summer and is now at Columbia. And they have the publishing program. But so many of the professionals in America in the publishing industry have come out of that program. So it's great that you have one here. Now let me ask you, how many writers are there in the room?
Closeted or out of the closet?
How many published writers? And the rest of you are editors or in publishing houses? Okay. Well, since my experience is of course primarily American with some knowledge of the UK, I have to tell you that in the US right now, we're very challenged in the publishing world. As you know, we have a reality TV star as our president, and he runs our country like a reality TV show, with every day some new surprise, and we wake up every morning shuddering to think what he may have tweeted that may have reversed what he decided the day before. Perhaps we hope he's reversed it. Even last night when I went back to my room, I turned on CNN briefly, how grateful I am I've been away from it for this time. And he was supposed to, in 10 minutes, he was supposed to come on and say that they temporarily solved the government shutdown program. Well, it took an hour and a half. Finally, I turned off the TV because I had to go to sleep. This morning I saw online that he finally came out and said it, but the TV commentators were all worried he would reverse himself or was just going to say what the last person he spoke to had said. Now, why this is relevant to publishing is that right now in America, we find that the only books that are really working are either pro-Trump, anti-Trump, or Trump-related, or they can fit into our general conversation. And of course, I see you even here, Bob Woodward and Fire and Fury, those were all sold millions. Michelle Obama will sell a lot. She's an icon. She's a true icon. I'm not. But for the general nonfiction book and for fiction, it's been a really, really difficult moment. Sunny Mehta, who you probably have heard of, who was one of your countrymen, still is, said to me a year and a half ago, Trump has sucked all the air out of the fiction market. And I had lunch recently with Caroline Reedy, the publisher of Simon & Schuster, which also has Scribner's. And I said, Caroline, literary fiction it's really difficult now, isn't it? And she said, not just literary fiction, commercial fiction. It's just so hard to find a place in the noise that's going on. Now I do have clients who are not Indian, but I have a young Indian client named Anand Giridharadas. He's really Indian American. He was born in America. And he wrote a book that cannot publish this year called Winners Take All, the elite charade of changing the world. None of us really, it's a very excellent book. He's a terrific reporter and a very good writer. But we didn't know what to expect. We were hoping maybe 15,000, 20,000. Anyway, Anand was able to make this book part of the general political climate. And he's very good at tweeting and going to different forums across America. And they've now got 65,000 copies in print. And the UK, who had turned it down initially, saying it's too American, they just picked it up and brought him to England for publication there. So there are books that can break through. Now, what we're finding in fiction, and I imagine most of you are the writers here probably write fiction or poetry. Poetry is always a difficult market in America. It's never, ever been a big market. But for fiction, you almost have to have something, have it anointed in some special way. Now, at this fair, I happen to have two writers, and I'm sure they were chosen because they did have success. Andrew Sean Greer is one of them, who wrote Less, which is a wonderful novel and got a front page Sunday Times review. But it sold well, I mean nicely, maybe 12,000, 15,000 copies. But until it won the Pulitzer, it didn't really capture the national conversation. And that, at that point, the paperback was coming out, and now it's sold, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies. The UK, who turned it down initially, bought it, and they have sold, which I think is quite amazing. Little Brown UK bought it. Little Brown's his publisher in America. Little Brown UK has sold over 100,000 copies in the UK and probably in India and territories. But that's wonderful numbers for a book in the UK. Just so you know, we figure that every book in the United States, we figure 5 to 1. 1 sold in the UK and 5 will sell in the US. Of course, that's not always true, but that's just sort of the ratio of the populations. And the other writer I have here is Andre Aciman, who wrote Call Me By Your Name, which had a very good literary review success, but had never really taken off in the numbers until the movie came out. And as we know, not all movies or TV shows work and are necessarily good, but this one got such international acclaim that it's put Andre into the international spotlight and is helping all his fiction. Faber then bought the Enigma Variation, which is a wonderful book, and so it's positioned him. But so many books disappointed this year in terms of fiction. One book that worked, and that's because in America we keep trying to find new voices from ethnic or racial communities that haven't been heard from. And Tommy Orange's book, There, he's an urban Native American, and Knopf published it. And I think it's probably, it got excellent reviews and also a lot of off-the-book page attention. That's what you need, off-the-book page attention. Interviews about being an urban Oakland, California Indian. We've had books by Native, I shouldn't say Indian, by Native Americans. We've had books by Native Americans who've been on, we've had reservation experiences, but none from the completely urban point of view. And that did well. Sigrid Nunez wrote a book called The Friend, which really, luckily it has a dog at the center, which always helps, but it's a fine literary book. And it did modestly until it just won the National Book Award. And I saw a number of European publishers who were suddenly interested in it. But even the French suddenly woke up once it won the National Book Award. So we're in a difficult situation in America in terms of fiction. And I feel like I should ask you, one thing I think we also have to talk about is what happens once you've delivered your book. I don't think in India you have agents who are as prevalent. In the UK and the US, most everyone has an agent. So therefore, once a writer who has finished his book will probably present it to his or her agent. Or if they don't have an agent, they will ask a writing professor or another writer to recommend it. Because, for example, in my agency and most agencies, we don't take unsolicited manuscripts. We just couldn't. We'd be overwhelmed. I used to say there'll soon be more writers than readers. And unfortunately, I think we're at the tipping point of that because so many people in the age of memoir think they have a story. And Amazon has opened up all these outlets for self-publishing. So let me also speak up about reading. I was a little disconcerted by the keynote speech, the real keynote speech, the first day, when that wonderful gentleman was talking about these young writers, like 10, he said he found this wonderful writer who was 10. I think I value writing more than, or perhaps I value writing along with another cohort of people because I don't think 10-year-olds should be publishing. I think they should be reading. They may be turn out to be very fine writers, but even in the States, someone called me up about their 13-year-old son or daughter, and I said, I'm sorry, and I knew this person, I don't want to read any manuscripts by a 13-year-old. They have not read enough or experienced enough. They may be so talented for a 13-year-old or a 10-year-old, but this is the stage where they should be absorbing the literature of the world so that they can then, when they're maybe 20, 21, they can approach a novel again. And I must tell you that most of the writers I know have a first novel that they never were able to sell and put in a drawer. So there's nothing terrible about that either. But it's a real craft and a gift and a talent. And I feel that it is being nurtured here at this wonderful event. And I hope that the United States will soon become, perhaps when we get rid of Trump, we will return to a more sane culture. So I don't want to go on. Are there any questions from the audience that you might have about the US publishing scene or I mean, I can't speak to the UK quite as well. Yes?
So this is a question about some writers who are represented by global agencies.
Mm-hmm.
You may not see Indian languages print runs very conducive or very attractive, but perhaps fail to see that we are 22 languages.
Right.
And arrival of an international author in one language would definitely help other language publishers to notice that book and probably go. So maybe a 2,000 or a 5,000 copy offer is not very attractive for giants at times. So what do we do in such scenario? And is there a imbalance or any check or balance there?
Well, the problem that would have with that is that no other publisher could probably read that language, and you'd have to have it translated, and the translation is probably not very good. So that's putting you at a real disadvantage, and putting that writer at a real disadvantage.
Translation, quality of translation is not a question here. It's the economy of scale. So what I'm trying to say is that for a language market which has about 18 active printing and publishing languages industries, so we can't do like a million copy contract with giant authors. So we do about 5,000, 2,000, 10,000 copies.
Oh, you mean you're buying from the West?
Yes.
Here, I see.
So that, so you know, this number of copies is not a very, very attractive offer for some of the big agencies and so on.
Right, I understand.
So yeah.
But that's fine. I mean, Andre just got an offer from Egypt. That's not very big either. You know, we have to listen to those because I think especially, at least I feel strongly, and I know other Americans do, given the fact that America has turned so inward under Trump, we have to open out. In fact, I'm on the National Book Foundation. which sponsors, we have a lot of reading programs, but we also sponsor the National Book Award. And we have, for the first year, we created, in 20 years, we created a new prize for translation. Because we felt, again, in terms of the international scene, we wanted to make a statement that we included world literature and that it was important. And so a translator's prize is given. Yes?
Thank you for saying a lot of things that you said. Ma'am, I myself am a new time writer. My novel will be launched today itself. The question that I have as a writer and entering this, the question I have as a writer and entering this industry is that English writers who are writing. My question is that English writers who are writing on generic topics, who are not writing about India as such, some general novels, books and general writing as such, how receptive are we to the American audience, to other Western audience? Are they open to reading books by Indian authors which are not as such a window to India or something like that? They're just generic novels on general topics.
Depends how good they are. They're open, but I'm just telling you, fiction is very challenged, even for the American writers now. So if a writer's novel is extremely outstanding, or it's grasped that way, yes, it has a chance. But so many American writers are having their books rejected because the numbers aren't good enough. And this is really, the numbers rule everything in America now. And to be fair to the publishers, I'm going to explain one reason why. Amazon dominates our selling market. Not quite 50%, but hovering around there. They and Barnes & Noble, which is struggling, that's another, and order, if a book has been published, if a writer has been published, and the numbers weren't good on that book, they won't order any more copies. They base their order on the new book, on the copies sold on the last book. So the publishers find that very difficult. It is maddening, absolutely maddening. Now you may have heard that we do have a growth of independent bookstores now in America, but that's very significant for literary fiction, but it doesn't really make the copy sale. I mean, it hasn't increased to the extent that I certainly love them because they support authors, their sales clerks have read the books, they know who their readers are that are coming in to buy. So luckily Amazon has not dominated you yet. And it hasn't really in Europe either. Now the one growth industry in publishing in America, and this may interest you, is audiobooks. That had 2 years ago, it was 25% up. And I represent Ronan Farrow, the journalist who broke the Harvey Weinstein case, and he's very, very busy, and he has a new book to finish, and he desperately wanted to read his audiobook. They don't pay much for the reading, and I said, oh, Ronan, you don't have time, you've got 3 more pieces for the New Yorker, you've got a book contract. He said, I don't care. I insist. This book was about the State Department and his own experience there. He said, this is my voice, and my generation reads. They listen to audios. So he insisted on reading it himself. Yes?
I have a question. I have a book that's based on New York City and has been uploaded in Brooklyn. Where do you think I should pitch it? In the US or in India?
Oh, so you don't have a publisher in India? But where do you live?
New York City.
Well, it'll be tough, but I don't think any agent, I know you're doing pitches here. I don't believe in pitches. I only believe seeing it on the page. So, I mean, what are you doing here? You came to...
Can I send it to you?
I don't take unsolicited manuscripts, I just said, that's the problem. You'd have to have another writer that, if you live in New York, you must know other writers, you must know people in the academic world. I mean, too many people are just sitting down, and that's why we can't read them all. People are just sitting down and writing and just sending them out. That's why we have to have that little standard. Yeah. For example, I get often, I will hear from Chiki Sarkar or other editors in India, and they will recommend a writer to
Would
me.
you recommend an agency?
I don't really know one but let me tell you this, publishers in America do take unsolicited manuscripts. They do. So that's where you should find a publisher whose list you like. Go to the New York Public Library. They have tons of information on all this. Do you go to that?
Yes.
Yeah. On 42nd Street,
Yes.
the big one.
Yes.
All right, I think I have to leave because I want to go hear my writer, Andre Asiman, who is talking on the Great Lawn, and I missed the first of his speech. But I thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm very happy to be here, and good luck to all of you. And please, good luck to us.